So, it's Monday, and if you were hoping for a smooth start to the week, well, surprise. The markets are already crashing faster than a Game of Thrones season finale. Global stock markets are down, and it's not just a bad hair day for investors. It's a full-on financial apocalypse. Guess who's at the center of it all? None other than President Trump himself, a man who truly believes tariffs are the solution to everything, like a knight in shining armor, but instead of saving the kingdom, he's sinking the economy.
Asia plunged at the start of the new week of trading, with fears growing of a global recession. Shares in Hong Kong are down more than 12%. It's the worst day in well over a decade. We've also seen slides in Taiwan, Japan, China, India, and South Korea. As investors retreat, huge amounts of money have been wiped off companies' balance sheets worldwide.
Now, Trump's just out here like the trendy villain in an action movie. I'm going to make America great again, but first, let's start a trade war. Tariffs are his new shiny toy, and he's not letting anyone take it away. China has been abusing us for years, he claims, as if he's some kind of trade superhero. But of course, just when you think the plot's predictable, enter the EU, which is now threatening to hit back with their own tariffs. Oh, the drama. A full-fledged trade war. You just can't script this stuff.
I want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. And we have such a horrible, we have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen. They took our businesses, they took our money, they took our jobs.
Wednesday, EU trade ministers are gathering in Luxembourg to discuss how the bloc could and should respond. Some member states favour hitting back with retaliatory levies on American goods, but others want to dial down the tensions to avert an all-out trade war.
Now we turn to the EU, yes, Europe, where every decision is a three-course meal of diplomacy. You have some leaders calling for revenge tariffs on US goods, while others are trying to do some political waltz, suggesting talks and negotiation. Real talk though, Europe is stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they escalate, it's a full-blown trade war. If they don't retaliate, it's like admitting, yeah, we'll just take the punch. If Game of Thrones taught us anything, it's that hesitation leads to certain doom.
Every day, 4.5 billion euros worth of goods and services cross the Atlantic between the European Union and the United States. This bilateral trade is the largest in the world. The tariffs imposed by the Trump administration now make doing business in the US more costly for Europe. And Brussels is preparing to respond strongly. But the preferred option in the EU is a negotiated solution with Washington. Germany's finance minister even calling for removing all tariffs on all imports.
The easiest way to assure balance and fairness is if everyone goes to zero, and then we have free trade and efficiency, economies of scale. The key is to send a signal that we are willing up to including reducing tariffs all the way to zero.
But wait, plot twist. Elon Musk, everyone's favorite tech billionaire, decides to crash the party and suggest something truly radical. Zero tariffs. Wait, what? Musk, the king of electric cars, suddenly wants everyone to hug it out and pretend this trade war never happened. The guy who only a few weeks ago was sending rockets to space now wants to negotiate peace treaties between the US and EU like he's a UN ambassador. Yeah, this ought to be interesting.
At the end of the day, I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone.
Free trade between the European Union and the United States remains an aspiration, and experts I've spoken to here agree that cancelling the tariffs on the goods and services currently traded between the US and the EU would be good for both sides.
Dropping tariffs bilaterally between the US and the EU most definitely would be the best outcome. Having cheaper trade between those two economies would benefit both of them. Whereas the flip side, if we have tariffs 20% on each side, that increased costs for both sides. Tariffs are a tax. Tariffs are an import tax, and that can be lowered very quickly, very easily.
Liberation Day.
On the day he announced the US's new measures, Donald Trump suggested he could be open to zero tariffs.
To all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs, I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers.
Let's just take a moment here to acknowledge the contradictions at play. Trump's stance is clear. Tariffs are good. Trade wars are essential for making America great again. Meanwhile, Musk is out here suggesting we all just agree to disagree and have some nice tea. But isn't this the same guy whose businesses are directly impacted by these tariffs? How does he sleep at night knowing his Tesla prices might skyrocket thanks to all this global chaos? Oh, and don't even get me started on how both the US and the EU have their hands tied, trying to figure out how to pretend they're not playing a dangerous game of political chicken.
Our correspondent Lucia Schulten is at the trade ministers meeting in Luxembourg, which I mentioned before. Lucia, what's the mood there like? One of retaliation or negotiation?
So the European Commission has been really making clear that they first want to negotiate. So that is the big hope here in the European Union still, that there is a solution which can be negotiated. Nevertheless, they have also been making very clear, especially Ursula von der Leyen last week has been saying that the European Union is ready to give a strong response and that they're already preparing countermeasures. They're already working on tariffs against the steel and aluminium, which have been announced later, and they're also working on more countermeasures when it comes to the so-called reciprocal tariffs. So it is a twofold strategy. On the one hand, they still want to negotiate. On the other hand, they're preparing. And this is what the current mood here is right now. They want to be ready to give a firm response, but they're still clinging on this hope that they could negotiate with the United States.
Now let's talk about the end game. Both Trump and the EU are basically playing chicken with their economies. Trump's pushing hard, thinking he's in control, while the EU's playing catch up. But here's the real kicker. Both sides are saying the same thing. They want a zero tariff future. Well, isn't that just ironic? We're in the middle of a trade war, and what do we all secretly want? Free trade. Let's all get along. No tariffs, more cheap stuff. Can we even get there? Who knows? I mean, if anything, it feels like a giant cliffhanger. Will the EU back down, or will Trump's tariffs finally bite him? Stay tuned.
But surely this sudden American idea of zero tariffs, which many Europeans have wanted for a long time, do resonate with leaders there?
So I think what is important to see is that this is really not a completely new idea. Over 10 years ago, negotiations started on a so-called TTIP agreement. The TTIP agreement would have created a massive trade and investment partnership between the United States and the European Union. These negotiations back then failed, and right now there might be a new opportunity to give this a push, and we will make sure to ask these questions to the trade ministers, which are really important in these questions, the trade ministers of the 27 EU member states, which will arrive here in Luxembourg. We will make sure to ask them the question what they will think of this, so stay tuned.